picture that you're looking at right now is an example of a body that is walking off beat, if you want to put it in terms of music. And I'm going to show you why that is. It's also an example of the Left AIC Right BC pattern in action or lack of action. So what you're looking at is a body that is stuck on the right side. So when you look at this gentleman's body, if you look at the first picture, his right foot is on the ground, and his right shoulder, this is my right shoulder, is lower. Now, when he's in the second picture, he's in the transition stage. He's transitioning from right foot to left foot, but look at his right shoulder. It's still lower. It's not starting to come up. And then when you look in the third picture, his left foot is on the ground, and his right shoulder is still lower. Things have never changed. So what does that mean from a biomechanical perspective? In picture one, his pelvis is to the right. In picture two, his pelvis is probably coming more towards the center, but the left side is still forward. And then in picture three, when he's on his left leg, his pelvis probably never gets to here. It never gets past here. So what doesn't happen is his left side, the left ilium, never comes back. The right side never comes forward. So the pelvis and lumbar spine never turn fully to the left. And that means that even when he puts his weight on his left foot, his pelvis hasn't turned to the left. So he's not truly on his left leg. Biomechanically, he's still oriented to the right side, even when his weight is on his left leg, and that's the problem. And again, you know this, you don't have to look at the pelvis, just look at the shoulder. When in the first picture, he's on his right foot and his right shoulder is lower. That's how it should be if you're on your right leg. That's the Left AIC pattern. That means someone's pelvis is turned to the right, as it should be if it's on the right leg, if they are on the right leg. In the second picture, he's in the transition stage. He's probably got a right arch, right big toe, and a left heel going on, hopefully. But the problem is the pelvis never turns to the left, and you know because his left shoulder never drops down, which means his rib cage, this is his left rib cage, his right rib cage is all down and in. The left side is up and kind of out and up, externally rotated. That's on the right side. And then he goes to the left. It should switch. The left side should come down and the right side should open with a pelvis that's turned to the left. But clearly that's never occurring because, as you see, his left shoulder is higher the entire time, which means his body, even when he's putting his weight on his left foot, never gets into true left stance. He'll put his weight on his left leg, but not all of it, because you can tell his upper body is still never going as far left as his upper body goes as far right. So what does that mean? This now can get into a philosophical discussion about kind of the state of the universe and how humans exist, but also on a more biological level in the rhythms of the brain and how your brain detects change and why it expects change, and how that change is necessary for a body to move forward and stabilize and breathe without restriction. Just a quick interjection, if I may. If you find this video interesting or helpful, could you please like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, or comment? I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I'm going to read a definition of something called dependent arising. And for me, it comes from Buddhism. Dependent arising. All impermanent phenomenon, and the human body is certainly impermanent, as is standing on your left leg or standing on your right leg. That's an impermanent phenomenon because it's constantly changing. So all impermanent phenomenon, transitory, ephemeral, things that constantly change, whether physical, mental, or otherwise, come into existence dependent upon certain causes and conditions. What it basically means is you do not exist the way you think you do. We all tend to think that we are some isolated individual who exists by ourselves, but in reality, we depended upon a mother and a father, sperm and egg, the right sperm and the right egg, their fathers and mothers, their grandparents, great-grandparents, all the way back to the beginning of human existence, had to fall in line for us to even be born. If one of those people was not there, you would not exist right now and you would not be watching this video. But that's just the idea of we do not exist by ourselves. We come into existence based on conditions, previous conditions. Now, that's kind of like too much for us to really even think about, but it's true. But when we're looking at the human body, when we can look at dependent arising in the same way. The left side of the body and the right side of the body are dependent upon each other. Left, the word left has no meaning without the word right. Because without the word right, left would not exist. It would just be a thing. So when someone is, you have to have something to compare, okay? So the brain, our brain, works, we can only know something when we can compare it to something else. If you for some reason ended up on the side of a mountain, kind of just spontaneously arose out of nothing, you just appeared on the side of a mountain and never saw another human being, never saw another human, yet you were old enough to think, what would you think of yourself? What would you be? How would you think of yourself? You wouldn't really know because you wouldn't have anything to compare yourself to. You might look at yourself and say, well, I know I'm not that thing, which is a bird or a tree. I know I'm not those things, but what am I? What am I? I don't know what I am. The only way you know stuff is if I'm a male, I compare myself to females. If I'm tall, I compare myself to short. But tall and short only have meaning because they're differences, because they're different. So they exist in relation to each other. This individual, while he's walking, he has no other side for his brain to compare what his right side is doing to. So if you're living on your right side, and this person is, he's walking on his right side only. Even when he puts his weight on his left foot, it never completely gets there. So at that point, your brain is expecting change because our brains respond to changes in the environment and changes internally because that's the conditions of the universe. That's the conditions of the world upon which our existence is based off of, is change, constantly changing conditions. Our brain expects that. That's why our eyes are drawn to novelty. Our minds are drawn to novelty. We think the world is, so many terrible things are going on, but that's only because that's what we watch, that's what we pay attention to. We don't pay attention to 99% of the day that is spent completely normally where people are interacting very nicely with each other. We watch the news and be like, oh, these terrible people on the news, and think that's representative of the entire world, but it's not. So our brains are drawn to novelty, both out there but also inside. So our brain is constantly looking for change and expecting change. And when that change doesn't occur that it expects, it will start to tighten up. So the human body is one. It's not a left and it's not a right. Left and right just are figments of the human imagination. They are concepts of the human mind. But nonetheless, that's how we understand things. Your brain is not thinking in terms of left and right. It is expecting change from the ground underneath the foot on the right and the ground underneath the foot on the left. It expects to fully sense the ground underneath both feet. But if your weight never changes, that's because you have so many nerve receptors on the bottom of your feet that are sensing pressure from the ground. That's how your brain knows what you're doing, which direction you're going, how quickly you're going. It expects changes in that information, and then it can base its movement patterns off of that change. But when that change breaks down, your body will start to get fearful. When you're never on your left leg, biomechanically, you can bring it back to biomechanics. If the pelvis never gets to the left fully, you'll never actually use your left hip musculature fully. You'll never use your left hamstring fully, your left adductor, your left glute medius, your left glute. What you're going to rely on are hip flexors and lower back muscles. And that is a threatening, if those muscles are on constantly, those are the threat muscles. When you go into a fight or flight type of experience, those muscles will be a little bit more active than anything else. They are holding you into that position. So if you're always on your right and you never fully get to the left and that left shoulder never comes down, your brain will never sense complete pressure coming from the ground underneath that left foot, just like you're seeing as in this gentleman's walk. And actually his partner, same thing. They're not on the same step. They're not perfectly synchronized, but you can see her shoulder's never changing either. She's completely on her right side also. So you have two left AIC right BC patterns. You're staring at them, walking together. So the left and the right, depend upon each other to empower each other. A right side can't work correctly without the left, and a left side certainly can't work correctly without the right. So we need the two sides alternation. So our arms can swing appropriately, so our necks can rotate appropriately. All of these things must be there so that our body can move and breathe in a non-compensatory way. So hopefully this was just kind of getting a little philosophy in there to maybe, hopefully, get you to understand the bigger picture a little bit better.